Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Savannah on Film. I'm your host, Ed Susevich here. And this is my first recording remotely that we're doing of the show. You'll hear it. This is recorded live. And during this pandemic and this very trying time that we've got going on here, so I've got a very special guest to welcome me back. I have not done a new show since I think the first part of March. And so hopefully you've been enjoying the encore episodes that we've had here on WRUU. And so we're coming back with a brand new show here and a different way of doing things, and hope to be back in the station very soon. First off, I want to send all my thoughts and prayers out to everyone there who's been affected by this pandemic. And we're all going to get through this. We're all in this together, as people say. And I truly believe that, we're all going to come through stronger as coming through all of this. And it's just going to be a great experience. Well, maybe not a great experience going through it, but I think we're going to come out better people for it. And it's those challenges that really try us in these times. And so I think hopefully we'll be a lot stronger and a lot more together. Anyway, so I could yap on all day, but the reason we're here on Savannah on Film is to explore the economic and cultural impact of the film industry in Savannah through conversations with people who work in the industry and related fields. And I think this is your third or fourth time, which would make you my most guest. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, I want to welcome Patrick Roper. I'm sorry. And so thank you, Patrick, for agreeing to be be my test subject here. As it
Sure.
were. And we're doing
Anytime.
a little bit differently. And we had originally planned to have you on in April, but things went a little south in the world, and we weren't able to get you on. But you're here now, and I'm excited, super excited that you're here. And we're going to talk about a lot of good things here, getting caught up with you and where your career is going. We're going to talk about life of an actor through the pandemic that we've all been going through, and we're just going to talk about a lot of projects that you've worked on. And there's a couple of them that the last time you were on the show, they hadn't come out, so you weren't able to talk about them. And so we get to go into more detail this time with some new information. If you're not familiar with Patrick Roper, then you should be. He is, in my personal opinion, one of the best actors in the Savannah area, in the southeast region of the country. And I want to see this guy go global. And I know there's a lot of great things. Patrick's a wonderful person. I've had the pleasure of being a friend of his and working on some films with Patrick, and just watching his career advance. And one of the things I do like about you, Patrick, is that you always give back. And through your knowledge, you're one of those people that reaches back, and you, through whether it's a Facebook post or just talking with others coming up in the industry, you're always willing to share some of your knowledge. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And welcome. So,
Thank you.
Let's see. So one of the latest projects, we're going to go straight to, you've been in some other things like Killer Man, which we're going to talk about, Florida Girls. We're going to talk about Emperor. And let's just probably start there with Emperor. This film was supposed to come out in March, correct?
Yeah, it was originally slated to be released nationally March 27th. And obviously that did not happen. They changed the release dates a couple of times on it, I think, hoping that they might slide it in before they had to close things down. So at one point they slated it for March 20th, and then they figured found out like everybody did. They couldn't make it work. All the theaters had shut down everywhere. So it is temporarily on hold until they, I assume, either decide to hold it until they can show it in the theater or decide to eventually just put it out on streaming. They have not indicated where they're going with it yet, and I think, like most people, they probably don't know. They're probably just waiting to see what happens. So.
Yeah, this whole COVID-19 has put everything, the industry, in a quandary. I mean, theaters aren't even open yet at this point. This is May. We're in almost the end of May at this point, recording this, and we're hoping that the industry gets up and going. I know behind the scenes there's a lot of work going on to figure out how we move forward as an industry and how films are made. And you gave me a bit of a insight on how The Mandalorian is being done. You talked about the production of that, and what are your thoughts on that? I wanted to share that with the audience here.
That is one angle that I have seen floated out there. Read a few articles, is that some people are, because travel could be a very interesting problem with this whole thing. It's very expensive. I mean, like some of the things that are being floated right now is that they're having to put people into quarantine before they can travel, and then sometimes quarantine wherever they arrive. So you could easily be talking about a month of sitting around in hotel rooms doing nothing, except hopefully, working on your lines and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you could be talking about studios putting you up for a long period of time before you even hit the set. And then, of course, they quarantine you. I mean, at least what they're talking about right now is they're quarantining people at locations while they're working. So all that becomes very expensive, and it's very difficult on people. So one prospect that they had been looking into is much like the way The Mandalorian is being filmed in one big studio with huge LED screens that you can change infinitely to whatever setting you want. It has been floated that that's a possibility for doing this in a very contained way where people can stay localized much easier. On the flip side of that, I've also read a number of articles recently that are indicating that some countries right now are opening up for filming or will soon be opening up for filming. So they might go into that mode where they maybe quarantine you for said period of time, 14 days, whatever, beforehand, ship you over to whatever country. Some of the ones that are opening up and talking about this right now are like Iceland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia. Yeah, those places are opening up within the next couple of weeks, supposedly, for filming. So a lot of the studios might actually shift productions to places like that. So it might not be a matter of incentives anymore that get companies filming. The incentive at this point is where they can film. So, but we're still in the beginning stages of everybody figuring out how to do this. So
the new world that we're in. And, yeah, there's different ways with technology. I mean, 20 years ago, we couldn't probably do films the way we do them in this, time and period, and even distribution of films, the whole streaming aspect of, does a film go to Netflix? Does it go here or there? Some films that the theaters are closed, but streaming is, the thing. That's how we're getting our entertainment now. It's changing the whole industry, and it's going to be, I hope that we don't forget about theaters, local theaters, and that experience of going to a theater and how most films are meant to be seen, you know, in that theater aspect of things. I hope that everything just doesn't go straight to streaming. It can, you know, do both. And I know there's some of the studios, AMC and Universal, you know, and they're all back and forth whether, you know, streaming this or releasing it on film, because if you stream something, the company, like, they make like 90% or if not all of the take. But when you have to put it in a theater, you know, you got to split it with this and that. And so money talks, but it'll be interesting to see how the distribution of film becomes a thing. And even how they're made, like we're just talking about there, like what they're doing with the Mandalorian, that's a way to get it done. Do you think that this is a prime opportunity for short films and films of that sort before the blockbusters come back? Or if the blockbusters come back soon?
Yeah. Indies, by all accounts, indie films and shorter films, guerrilla type films,
Right.
things that are made on budgets are definitely at an advantage at this point because they routinely deal with smaller budgets. They deal with smaller crews usually. They can be contained much easier. There's a lot of things that are starting to become common knowledge. Pretty much the idea of being a background actor is going to be moot, probably. They just can't do crowd scenes. So, I mean, there's talk of, any number of ways that could be done. I mean, they could obviously add people in digitally. They could just strategically shoot and not have to deal with, background extras. It also suggests, though, that maybe smaller co-star roles might start getting trimmed a bit. And when we talk about that, it can sound like a bit of a disadvantage for people that are starting out, and in some ways it can be. In other ways, it can create advantages for people who are upshifting their careers. It could be that for those guest star roles and those recurring guest star roles, those slightly meatier things that we all like to try to get, it could be that some of the bigger names don't want to come and sit on a set that might be potentially contaminated. So,
and that's understandable.
That could open up opportunities for people if you're willing to do that. If you're willing to, I suspect there's going to be a bit of a risk no matter what you do.
Right.
So people are going to have to make their own decisions about what they're willing to risk. But it sounds like they're coming up with some ideas, some plans. Ultimately, the best thing to do is to tune in to what the unions are saying, because the unions run the show one way or the other. There's always articles we see out there on, different media, Deadline, Variety. They're interesting, but a lot of those articles are not coming out of information that's written by the union. And the union's going to dictate what we do on set. So,
right.
Except in the cases of these smaller productions that are non-union anyway, they don't have regulations. So again, you're going to have to decide whether you want to risk an environment like that where they may or may not be careful. You don't have regulations dictating things. But the flip side of that is that a lot of these media giants, Netflix and Amazon and whatnot, are going to be running out of content soon. New content.
Right. So you got to replenish the well. I know several shows on different networks that had to cut their season short and were able to salvage it this season. And it's put off a lot of pilots and a lot of shows that would be coming, that, like, I know CW has pushed back their whole season till January. That way they know they can open their shows pretty much the same time. If things continue to improve, now if this COVID virus comes back with a fury, and then that changes the whole parameter of thinking for everything possibly in it. And I think we've learned in a lot of areas of society that a lot of things can be done remotely. um, we're able, we're doing this show actually remotely right now, from my home studio here, and that's amazing. But I hope that a lot of people that in a lot of crucial positions in films don't get eliminated. We don't see that, in some corporations, they'll say, well, we don't need so many people on site. We don't need this physical building. We can exist and work, from different parts of the world, essentially via the internet. And I hope that it doesn't take away a lot of jobs in the industry itself, following that model and saying, well, we're going to need to, I think any production coming out from this point forward is looking at saving money, obviously, even more. Do you think so? More than
Yeah,
usual? And
that's definitely going to be true. I mean, they've lost billions of dollars at this point.
right.
They're going to have to figure out how to make up for that, or they're going to crash and burn. So, but again, luckily, a lot of independent stuff is being made, which can. It's a good deal if you've got like right now. I've heard from a number of sources. It's if you've got a film in the can, if you've finished something
Right.
prior to everything shutting down, you have a better than average chance of getting it picked up by any of these places.
Just for
That's not a bad deal.
they're running out of content.
Yep.
And you got to have something. You don't want to turn onto a blank screen and reruns of whatever.
Yeah, I think at that point it just becomes interminable reruns of things. Either that, or they just buy old content, which I'm sure there's going to be a mix of stuff going on. But they always, the only way you keep people tuning in is new stuff. So in this case, I think we're going to see a really big revolution in indie film, which I'm excited about, because I love indie films. We back in the '70s we had such fantastic films by people who became icons in the '80s, and the '90s we saw another big uptick in sort of many major, more or less indie films that were usually sweeping awards at that point in time. So I'm excited by that prospect. I mean, we've had tentpole films for a while now. They're fun rides, but it would be nice to get back to more intimate storytelling.
I almost feel like there's no choice but to,
Yeah.
financial. If I'm looking out the finances for a film, I want to do it as cheaply as possible, even more so now than before, because and distribution is another thing. Do you go straight to streaming? Do you do a hybrid mix where you put it in theaters? Would you get a better chance? There might be a better chance that an indie film will pull people to theaters, because just because the theater's open doesn't mean people are going to race to them into a crowded room.
No, that's probably not going to happen for a while. I doubt that business model is going to bounce right back rapidly, just because people are going to be very scared to go into those facilities. Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I'd probably be a little bit nervous at the moment going to a theater unless they really assured me that it's clean.
They're doing social distancing and stuff, which, cuts down the capacity of theaters. It cuts down, there's a lot of parameters, a lot of things we never anticipated, and how this changes the industry. I want to talk about, and this is shifting gears a little bit, but we're talking about Emperor, in which you couldn't really talk about before, but you can now.
A bit more, yeah.
Experiences. Do you want to talk about your experience on that film Emperor?
Yeah, I can. There should be a fair amount that I can share. I mean, I've shared a bit before on the build up to it while I was doing other interviews. There's a bit more information on that one that I should be able to talk about.
So I know that you were, when this was filming, you were going through some medical issues. If you feel comfortable
Yeah,
talking about that.
I had been in February of 2018. I had been diagnosed with stage 1 renal cell carcinoma, so kidney cancer, in short layman's terms. That's my second time I've had cancer. I had cancer when I was 19. In that case, it was undifferentiated adenocarcinoma, which was potentially deadly. And that, when I was 19, that kind of derailed my acting career for a couple of years. So this was this newer one was another episode in my life where I was wondering what was going to happen to me,
Right.
because things were picking up. I'd done a few projects at that point, and things were starting to look good. And then I got this diagnosis in February of 2018. So I told my agent at the time, just keep me working keep me auditioning until I can't audition. I mean, I have no idea what I was going to do. So I at least wanted to keep busy. So she kept me auditioning, and by April, I got this audition for Emperor, and it was something definitely very interesting to me. It's a historic piece, which is definitely in my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in for the audition, and Chad Darnell was the casting director on that, and I know Chad. He's cast me in quite a number of things. And I did the audition, and then I mentioned to him, which I normally don't do. I asked him, "So when's the callback on this?" And he said, "Well, it'll probably be in a couple weeks." And I said, "Okay, the only reason I'm asking you that is because I've been diagnosed with kidney cancer, and I'm going in for surgery in 2 days." So I just wanted to have an idea of when things were happening. So I went in, had my surgery, um, and I was in the hospital for a week. That's a pretty extensive kind of graphic surgery. It's quite painful, unfortunately. Um, so I was out of it, and I couldn't really do anything technically for about 6 weeks after. But about a day or 2 days after I got out of the hospital, I got notice that I had a callback for Emperor. So I wasn't going to let this little thing stop me. So I strapped my guts in. I still had staples and a drain in me. So I took a back belt and I strapped myself in.
Wow.
And I went in and did the audition with the director and producers there. And Chad, when I walked in the door, Chad looked at me and was kind of going, "Wow, I'm actually kind of surprised you're here, but cool." And we chatted a bit with the director and producers about what I was going through. And I did my audition, and we chatted a little while longer, and they asked me, "Do you think you would be ready to shoot in 6 weeks?" And I said, "Hey, that's exactly when my doctor told me I would be fine. So yes." And
And they
then
were
a
able
couple
to
days
do that.
later, I was told that I had it. So
That's fantastic. I mean, that's one there for perseverance, and I'm glad you've gotten through that. And how did that change how you approach the role? Did it change it in any way? Does it put
um,
Emperor a special place in your heart? Obviously, you think about that situation as an actor. Did it make it harder?
I
Did you
think
have to?
in some ways it made it easier, because I couldn't. do anything for 6 weeks on the lead up to it except research. So where normally I might be up and around doing, whatever and having a life,
Right.
I was really limited as to what I could do. So I was able to dedicate myself to study the time period and read books. And I knew one thing that I was going to be doing during the film was carrying a very large, heavy gun with me. So I wanted to get a feel for what that was like. What it was like to just carry a sidearm with you, like a 5-pound piece of metal,
Right.
everywhere you go, because it does really affect how you walk, how you do things.
Mhm.
So I purchased a replica of the exact
Oh my gosh,
gun,
there it is.
and it weighs about the same. And then I just strapped it on and wore it around for a few hours a day. And I can definitely confirm it changes your swagger quite a bit. It changes your attitude. The other thing is I'm left-handed, but like most lefties, I'm partially ambidextrous. So um, I was making decisions as to whether I was going to do this left-handed or not. Um, and I ultimately decided that I would do it left-handed. So I phoned into them and told them, I wanted a left-handed holster, um, which they were fine with. The thing is, though, is that it's kind of a fun little nod to, because I play one of the bad guys in this movie, and it's kind of a fun little nod to the old theatrical convention of things that come from the left side of stage or screen, tend to be considered evil.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
it's
you
an
play
old
a very
theatrical
good bad
convention
guy.
that dates back from before Shakespeare's time, even.
Yeah.
Um, so anything coming from the left side of the stage is typically considered evil. If you go to the left side of the stage, go off stage, off the stage in that direction, then you're usually going into oblivion. So it was kind of a little wink and nod to the audience of, this is a horrible human being. I also thought about things like at that time period, because the film takes place in the late 1850s, right before the Civil War. Um, Typically, left-handed people, left-handedness was beaten out of people at that time period.
Right. Well, I'm a lefty. They would probably beat it out of me too.
Yeah. So the way I saw it is like, this guy is so ornery that growing up they couldn't even beat left-handedness out of him. So
There's no way to get it out of them, right?
and I'm sure that this guy, the way I always kind of imagined it is like, if this guy survived to this age and being a left-handed human being at that time period, he would have to be a nasty little cuss.
So, um, what you also recently we're going to talk about this. You were interviewed on Good Day Atlanta, I think March 10th. So this is like
Yeah.
right around pandemic time or right
Yeah.
before it. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was cool. Yeah, I was doing a number of interviews,
It was on good
particularly up in
day.
Atlanta, and I did one. Actually, I did one just as everything shut down, for a podcast in England. so
Wow.
so I managed to. I've gotten around a little bit. It was interesting talking to the host of that one because he was on full lockdown at that point.
Do you remember the name of the podcast on that?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up again.
You have to
It
let me
seemed like
know.
it was a.
I'll put it in the notes on the website there so people can check
Yeah,
it
I'll
out.
look it up and shoot
Yeah.
it to you later.
Okay.
Um, and that's I don't think he's aired that one yet. A lot of the interviews that I have done are kind of being temporarily put on hold, from what I understand, until
like
yeah, the one
everything
on
lines
the
up
one on the one you mentioned in Atlanta there, that one
with
aired
Atlanta.
because they were still expecting at that point to open this thing.
Right. Because there was going to be a red carpet and everything in LA for it.
Yeah, I was scheduled to do a red carpet the week of the 27th. I think it was supposed to be the 24th or something. So I was going to fly out to LA and do the red carpet gig, but that did not happen. So
Yeah. Such is how it's gone so far. Next, I want to talk about let's talk about Florida Girls, because you couldn't talk much about Florida Girls the
yeah.
last time you were on, and so what can you say about it now that you couldn't say then?
Well, I mean, obviously then it hadn't aired, so I couldn't really reveal much of anything. But I ended up playing a character named Ken, who originally, when I auditioned for that one, it was just a one scene gig, one episode gig.
Right.
And Ken's sort of eternally downbeat. He's I took inspiration from Ben Stein
How
in that
so?
approach. There's just the delivery of that one is just
Just
very sort of
kind of
monotone.
monotone. Yeah, I'm
And
Ben Stein.
so I went in and I auditioned live with that one again with Chad Darnell. We of course taped it, and they sent it off to Laura Chin, and the producers. Laura Chin's the star of the show, but also one of the writers and creator of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard I got the part. I'm like, okay, great, cool. And then I had a friend who was the second AD on that set, and she contacted me and said, you do realize that you've been turned into a recurring character, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
no. She's
Ooh.
like, no, they've written you into the rest of the show. They liked, just based off of that one tape, they liked you so much that they just wrote you into several more episodes. So all told, I got 4 episodes out of that.
That's amazing. You have such a wide range, because you talked about playing the bad guy. I think you play a wonderful bad guy, like deliciously evil, and then, but you can do comedy. I've seen you in very funny comedies, and you've just got a very wide range as an actor. What do you attribute that to? Just doing your homework and
There's certainly that factor. I um I always tell actors to, as much as you're studying acting, go have a life, for starters. Just go. It's almost more important to just go and get experiences and have a life and be a well-rounded person. I mean, I grew up in a fun household where I was thankfully allowed to pretty much watch mostly anything I wanted. So I was exposed to a lot of different cinema and a lot of different television that was probably a bit more mature than I should have been watching, or and what most parents would
yeah,
probably not want their kids to watch. But my parents were okay with me digesting this, and they usually would sit me down and talk me through it, and so they didn't uh, sanitize reality for me. So I think that I grew up watching Richard Pryor and George Carlin and
I did too.
Winnie Bruce and if I didn't get the jokes, my mom would explain it to me. So I mean, I so I've always had that sort of sense of humor anyway. Um, and I think it's my ability to look at life through a lot of different facets. I've just gotten good at it. I don't. I try not to edit myself in that way. So
You don't limit yourself to what?
yeah, yeah, I sometimes describe, like, because I do play a lot of dark characters. I'm not particularly afraid to look at those little portions of my own psyche. We all have them. We all have horrible moments in our brains that are rattling around in there. The thing is that over time, we're usually taught to contain them, to put them somewhere, to not
Yeah.
deal with them. Whereas the job of an actor is to absolutely dig up that stuff and throw it out there into the universe. So I think knowing yourself really well and knowing where to find that sort of thing in your own psyche is very helpful. Not that I advocate the idea of the sort of methody idea of getting into that headspace and staying there, because I think that's a very bad place to be. I've gotten into the habit of being able to switch it on and off. So I can show up to set, get ready, put on my costume. Costumes are great because it's like putting on a brand new skin. I can look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm slowly transforming into this new thing. And I actually do spend a lot of time looking in the mirror before I go to set and looking right into my eyes and just kind of absorbing the image that I see.
Yeah, and having the costume and the props that go with it,
Yeah,
in this case would definitely, help you get into the role much easier. Because if you feel it's like the suit of clothes you wear does enhance it, it is part of the whole package,
yeah,
so to speak. And so I can see how that can
yeah. I mean, when you
go
when
into
when
it.
you put on boots, like footwear is a big thing. Footwear will always change the way you walk. And particularly footwear on sets where you're not used to wearing it and it's usually not very comfortable, that totally dictates how you're going to be walking. So you have to get used to new ways of walking and new ways of carrying yourself. And like I said with the gun earlier, it's like I'm wearing 5 pounds of metal around my waist, and that totally changes my gait and changes, I found cool little things to do because I had this, and I wasn't wearing it on the side. I was actually wearing it as a belly gun.
Yeah.
I just had this natural inclination to put my hands in different spots while I was resting and listening to people talking to me. For instance, one weird little thing that I came up with was um, every time Dayo Okanii is the lead in that film, and he plays Shields Green, who the whole film is about, and we're basically exact opposites in this movie. I played a slave overseer, he was playing a slave.
Mm.
So I developed this interesting little twitch, and at first it was unconscious, and then when I actually started noticing it, then I just kind of kept doing it and playing it up, which was that every time he would come close to me, I would usually put my hand on my gun and rest it there. And I kind of saw that character as like a rattlesnake. So rattlesnake warns you that it's there.
Right. Don't get any
So
closer, I'll attack.
I found myself, like, anytime Dio would come kind of near me, I found myself tapping my fingers on that holster, like a little rattle warning him, don't come
Interesting.
near me.
Um, so let's talk a bit about Killer Man, because that finally came out and
Yeah,
you're finally able to talk about
unfortunately,
it
I got cut from it ultimately, but
all that
um,
time.
at least I can talk about what I did, which was cool. Killer Man was that was the first big film After auditioning, after finally, getting back into the acting thing after taking a hiatus for many, many years,
Mhm.
I got my agent, started auditioning. I had auditioned for about a year. I think I did probably about 100 auditions, um, without anything, no callbacks, nothing. Um, and then finally, I got this role in Killer Man, and it was a few lines. I was playing a dad. The character was described as um, an angry Irish firecracker. Um, and again, Chad Darnell cast that one, and he looked at me when I walked in the room, and he said, "You're probably literally one of the only people in this town that can play this role. Um, you fit this description entirely, and they've already seen your picture and they love you. So, feel free to just let go and be angry," which I did.
So
We
cathartic, huh?
Yeah, we actually, because I only had a couple of lines, we actually ended up improvising just so that they could see some more stuff. So Chad and I pretty much ended up having a screaming match at each other in that audition room. And, he looked at me afterwards and a big smile on his face. He's like, that was great. And I walked out the door. I remember I walked out the door into the waiting room, and everybody's jaw just dropped because they had heard this horribly belligerent amount of nastiness going on in this room. So I got called back for that, and did the same thing, for the director. And I got to work when they cast me for that. Luckily it was filming right across the street, so I didn't have to really hardly go anywhere. I just walked
I'll be
across the
back.
street.
I'm going to my house
Um,
for 10-1.
they literally could have just phoned me. Like, I could have just stayed home and they could have phoned me, and I could have, when they were ready for me, I could have walked across the street. But so
So
I
you
got
had the
to
best trailer on the film. Your
I
house.
didn't even
Yeah.
know who I was supposed to work with,
Mhm.
until the night before. They didn't tell me who, because I was playing kind of like, the character I was playing was not a great human being, not like a bad guy, but just kind of skeevy, not great guy. Um, and I was playing against the main bad guy in the film, and I had no idea who they were. Originally in the script, it was supposed to be like a Latin mob, so I was like thinking of all the great Latino actors that I could possibly be working with, and they then I saw on the call sheet it was Zlatko Boric, who is Croatian, and he's a Danish citizen now. He immigrated there to Denmark from Croatia back in the 80s, I think. But that got me really excited because I love Zlatko Boric. For those that aren't familiar with the name, he's most famous for, he was in the Pusher trilogy of films, playing the main bad guy in those films. But most Americans will probably recognize him from the movie 2012.
Oh, okay. With John
Yeah,
Cusack. Yeah.
yeah. He played the Russian oligarch in that movie. Big guy. I mean, he's about my height, so about 6'4". He has crazy huge hair, like bright white gray hair,
Right.
and he has this really deep, resonant, booming voice. Um, and I met him, and I've been to Croatia a few times, so I actually speak a little Croatian. So I introduced myself
Right.
to him in Croatian, and he got really excited, and and we became kind of friends after that for the rest of the day, which was very nice. We talked a lot about Croatia and food and wine and all that. And then we did our scenes together, which was just a joy. And I remember at the end of the day, they were cutting me, and I think he went off to the restroom, and I was saying goodbye to people, and I was a little disappointed for a minute, going, "Oh, I don't get to say bye to Zlatko." And I started walking off, and then I hear this big, like all the way across set, I hear this big booming voice, "Patrick!" Turn around, and Zlatko's like walking towards me with his arms out, and so we gave each other a big bear hug. But
It's good to
oh
work
yeah,
with you,
that
Patrick.
was a dream. That was awesome.
That's pretty cool. So what's so far? What's been one of the highlights of your career as an actor?
um, I have certainly loved things like that. I've loved getting a chance to work with these actors, and they're particularly older character actors.
Mhm.
They always have the best stories. They have the best information. Um, I always tell people that when you get a chance to work with these older men and women who have been in the industry for 30, 40, whatever years, cherish the time you have on set with them. Most of the time they are very easygoing. um, on Emperor, for instance, I spent my first day, and I think it was the first day of actual shooting on that. I was working with MC Gainey, another character actor. He played every villain in every television show in the 1980s.
Awesome.
He, he's made a career out of playing bad guys, and again, he is kind of funny. He's about my height. He's a big guy. And I got to spend my entire day sitting around on a porch in the Georgia heat, in rocking chairs most of the time while they're setting things up and getting everything, ready to go. Just sitting with this man rocking on the porch and talking about his career.
It was like a free master class.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, he's from Mississippi, if I recall correctly,
Mhm.
but he was a Shakespearean trained actor. And at one point, there was a long lull between things, and he stood up and on these steps on this plantation house, and he started delivering the speech from Julius Caesar, friends, Romans, countrymen,
Awesome.
just because he was bored and wanted something to do. So he
Yeah.
boomed that out, and that was fun. And I remember the best the best part of that was that towards the end of the day, we're sitting in these rocking chairs and rocking and talking and looking at bugs and doing whatever you do in the Georgia heat. And at one point, he reached over to me and he touched my arm, and he said to me, he's like, "Patrick, it's like, I don't really like watching most of my movies. I don't like watching myself perform, but I love watching other people perform." And he said, "Watching you today has been just the greatest pleasure."
Wow.
And I was just so stunned by that. That was so generous of him
Mhm.
to have offered that to me. Um, yeah, love that man.
Great. Well, what's up next for you? Are we sure yet, or still?
um, I have been auditioning. One of the things that is still going on, even though there's a lot of uncertainty right now, auditions are still going on. A lot of pre-production is still going on a lot of projects, and with this new technology, or well, not really new, but they're shifting gears much more into self-tapes and Zoom callbacks and Skype callbacks and whatnot. So that's probably going to be the norm for quite a while. But I did get cast in a film right before this whole thing hit. Small role, and they keep pushing the production date back on that, but I think right now they're looking at August.
Okay.
So yeah, I got that, and then auditioning. So we'll see.
We'll see what the future holds. Well, we'll certainly be watching you to see where your career goes. You're always welcome back on the show here. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being part of my experiment here as I
Absolutely.
remotely record here. And where can people reach you if they? What's the best way to reach you if they need to hire you for their film?
I on Facebook, I run the Savannah, Georgia Actors Group. So that's always a good outlet for asking me questions. I'm also on Instagram. If you just if you just search for Patrick Roper, I'm
Okay.
usually somewhere at the top there. My big old picture of my ugly mug shows up. Um, so yeah, I mean, you can find me on social media, usually Instagram or Facebook. I'm I'm not fond of Twitter, so
Yeah, yeah. We all have our platforms. Anyway, thank you again, Patrick Roper, wonderful actor, multi-talented, one of the best coming out of Savannah in this area and beyond. And nothing but good thoughts for you and your future. And then thank you for joining me on today on Savannah on Film. So take care, Patrick. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you for having me, and everybody stay safe.
Take care, everybody.